This video is going to focus on database connectivity within Visual Studio. The last video showed you how to connect to SQL Server and run a script. So this video is going to focus on the rest of this part right here, where all we're going to do is create a drop-down list, select information from the SQL Server database, and bind that to the drop-down list. So instead of in HTML, you would have your select with a bunch of options, and you'd write all those out, or you'd run a for loop or something. In ASP.NET, you just run a select statement against the database and then bind that, and it takes care of making all of the individual options in the drop-down. So we'll switch over here to Visual Studio, and the first thing I'll go to Solution Explorer here, and I want to create a new project, and you should be doing this for every single one. File, New, Project. You want the ASP.NET Web Application. I'm going to change my default name down here. I'm going to change my location to my desktop. Again, if you are saving, do not save to another drive that is not your computer. Save to your desktop, and then when you're done, just copy it to the other drive. So I'm saving it directly on my desktop. I changed the name of it right here. I'll hit OK. And I'm just going to accept the default there. I want an empty site. Now that that's loaded, I'm going to add a new item. So right click, add new item. I'm going to put a web form in there. And I'm going to change the name of it to Lab04A. So I've got my name changed right there. I'll hit add. It shows up in my solution list here. I'll go ahead and close that. I don't need that. It already loaded the aspx for me. Here's the .cs. Those are the two files we'll be working with. Do not change anything that was already generated. The inherits or the namespace or the class. Just leave those alone. On the forward-facing page .aspx, we're going to put one control on there. That's going to be a drop-down list. We'll set it to run at the server. We're going to give it an ID. I'm going to call it my list. And for right now, that's all I'm going to do there. We're going to come back to this page after we do the .cs portion. And we have to add two attributes inside of there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll do a Control-Shift-B and just, we haven't done much, so it should build just fine, which it does. And now we'll come over to the .cs side. And the first thing we need to do is add a couple of using statements because we are using database connectivity. So I will do using system.data, semicolon, and also using system.data.SQL client, semicolon. So you need those two, system.data, system.data.SQL client. Inside of your page load is where we will be working on this assignment. We're not going to create any new functions. Everything on this one is just inside of the page load. That means that when the page loads in the browser for the first time, this function is going to execute. So it's not waiting for a click or anything. It's at page load. So what we need are a few declarations in here. So we're going to make a, oops, sorry, get out of that. Above the page load, we need a few declarations. of items that we are going to use. So I'm going to do a public string con str for connection string, and I'm going to go ahead and initialize that. So it'll be con str equals, and then you've got a set of double quotes. Inside of that is the connection string that you are going to need, and it starts server equals, and then after that is our web server, CGT web1.tech.purdue.edu, semicolon. After the semicolon, you do your user ID, which is the ID that you were given for the class. So UID equals, and then for you, this would be CGT 456 web number letter. So that's what it would be for you. For me, it's going to be my database. After that, it will be PWD equals for password. So this again is the password that you were given for the class. So yours might be hamburger 3A 435 or something. But that's the password that you were given for the class. And I'm going to come back and insert mine here so I don't have it in the video. And then after that, semicolon, database equals, and this is the same as your UID. So if your UID was CGT 456 web 3A, then your database is also CGT 456 web 3A. Mine again is the same as the one that I've created for myself. And that's it. So each one is separated by a semicolon. Server equals cgtweb1.tech.purdue.edu, semicolon, UID equals your login ID, semicolon, password equals your password that you were given, semicolon, database equals your login ID again. And I'm going to pause this now. I'm just going to scroll this off the screen here so that it's not visible. And I'm going to put my password in, so it's going to look different when I come back. Okay, so we have a couple of other items that we want to declare here. So again, I'll do a public string capital SQL semicolon. So that's a variable SQL that I'm going to use. Here I'm going to do a public SQL connection, SQL connection. That should show up for you just like it's showing up for me, and I hit enter. If it doesn't show up for you, that means you're missing these guys up here. And, oops, I forgot to actually create an object name. My SQL connection object name is ocon, lowercase o, capital C, for object connection. And the last one is SQL command. I'll hit enter, and then it is OCMD for object command. And we're done outside of the page load. Everything else is going to go inside of here. So right inside of the class declaration is where we declare our variables that we're going to use. And then those would be available down throughout. I chose to use public this time. We don't actually leave this particular page, so all of these could have easily been private. But we can look at that later. So there's not a terrible lot that goes inside of the page load, but the first thing that we want to look at is setting our SQL statement. So we're going to do SQL equals, and we're going to write a select statement. So I'll do a select, and I'm going to do distinct title from employees lab 4, which is the table that you should have already placed into your database so that you can reference it here. So now we've got that select statement. The next thing to do is create a connection to the database using that string. So I'm going to use ocon, my SQL connection object, and set it equal to new, and you'll see it pop up for you. So just hit enter and let it fill it in. and I need to use my connection string above, so constr. I'll hit enter to let it fill it in. The next thing we want to do is open that connection. So we'll do an ocon.open, and that opens an active connection to the database. Next, I'm going to use my command object, and I need to set my command. My command is the select statement up above. I need to send it to the database, because right now it just exists right here in my code. So I need to send it to the database. So ocmd equals, again, new space, and it highlights it. Just hit enter and let it complete it for you. And then I need to pass it the SQL query above and the connection that I'm using, because it is possible to have multiple connections. After that, so now the database has my select statement. I need to get the results from it. And on that front page, I gave this an ID of my list. So here I'm going to say my list, and it pops up for me. Dot data source is equal to my command object dot execute reader. And what that's going to do is read the results and set my list to use those results. That line does not actually make the results show up in the drop-down list. It just points to the location of the results that it can use for it. And then if you want to actually get them to show up, it's mylist.databind. And after that, we need to close our connection. And that rounds out what needs to be done. So I'm going to do a Control-Shift-B on this one. I'm going to come over here, right-click on my Lab04, view in the browser. And now I've got this happening. So I've forgotten one step. I told you I was going to go back to the front page, and then I forgot to go back to the front page. So I'm going to close that, minimize this, go back to the front page, and on that front page I need to add two attributes. The first one is data text field equals, and what you put in there is the column name. So the column name in the database is title. And data value field equals column name. Now, if you go back to regular plain old HTML, the select statement or the select tag inside of it has option tags. The option tag has a value inside of the opening tag, and then it has a value between the opening and closing option tags. So the value is what is going to be placed in the opening option tag, and the text is what's going to be placed between the open option tag and the close option tag. So that's the difference between those two. I'm going to do a Control-Shift-B to build that again. And then I am going to view in the browser once again. And now I've got my actual things showing up here. So now that we've done that, let me come back and add some comments, and also I might do a little bit more with you here. So this first line again is going to store a SQL statement into a variable. This next one is going to create a connection to a database using the string above. This one opens an active connection to the database. this one sends the SQL statement to the database to execute. This one reads the results and sets my list to use those results. This line actually shows the results in my list. That's the drop down on the front page. And then this one closes the database active connection. So that's for your reference there, so you can come back and be able to know what each of those lines does. That completes what the assignment says to do, but here's a little extra. So if you choose to do this extra, I'll know, excuse me, I'll know for sure that you watched the video. This is the only place this is going to appear, so it's not going to happen in class. Basically, when I look at your finished product, I'll know whether or not you watched the video or not. So let's do 3 more of these, and then we'll end after that. So what I'm going to do is on this front page, I'm going to add a couple of line breaks, and then I'm going to add 3 more of these drop-down lists. And I'm just going to copy that and paste it 3 times. But I'm going to need to change the IDs, the data text fields, and the data value fields. So this one I'm going to call names, plural. This one I'm going to call phones, plural. This one I'm going to call cities, plural. Right now they would all show the exact same thing, so we don't want that. This first one I'm going to do something a little special on. I'm going to call it FL names. That's not a column in the database. It's something we're going to create in the SQL statement, but these other 2 are just going to be columns. This one is home phone in both places. And this one is going to be city in both places. So again, this is not an actual column in the database. These 2 are. What you can do, you might say, well, I'm not sure, I don't remember all the columns in the database. Well, you can come over to Server Explorer. You can right click and refresh this. Might have to retype your password. Do a new query, and just do a select star from the table that we put in there. Hit the green execute, and then here's all your column names: employee ID, last name, first name, title. So we're going to concatenate first name and last name together, and that will become FL names. We're going to grab the city and we're going to grab the home phone. So that's what we're looking at. That's all. That was just to demonstrate, show you how you can get that. So we've already done this. We should not have to come back here unless I mistype something. And now what we need to do is put some additional code about this much 3 more times. So what we're going to start with is we close the connection there. We're going to start with an ocon.open again. And I'm going to go fairly slow. I'm not going to try to do it really fast. We're going to change the SQL statement, and I'm just going to retype that. So I'm going to do SQL equals. It'll be in double quotes. And this is going to be the special one. So it's going to be something you have not done before. We do select, and then there's a keyword concat, which is concatenation. We are going to concatenate the column first name, comma, with the column last name. But if I leave it like that, there's not going to be a space between them. So I'm going to do a single quote space, single quote, comma. So it's essentially grabbing 3 columns, if you will. The first column, the second one is just a space, and then the third one is the last name. And then I'll use the keyword as FL names. So that creates our column name from the same table. So that's our special one that we're doing, concatenating first and last names, but we'll be able to select it as though it's one column in the database. After that, we need our O command. So I'm copying these up here because they have I put the comments up there, so it'll just be handier to continue to have those comments as we move down the screen. This one doesn't change. We're still the command object. We are passing in this new SQL variable and this connection. The next thing is it's not my list dot, it's now names dot data source is equal to the command dot execute reader, and it's names dot data bind and then it's ocon dot close again. So that one will populate the names drop-down list, and now we've just got to do cities and home phone. And for that, to do the next two rather quickly, I'm going to copy this entire piece and paste it here. Again, we open the connection. We've got to change this SQL query. So it's no longer select that, it's select home phone. From Employees Lab 4, we send it to the command. This will be wrong. We need to change names to phones. And again, hit enter and let Visual Studio do it for you. So now it's phones.dataSource and phones.dataBind. Close the connection. And we'll do that one more time. But this time, instead of phones, it's cities, or city singular. So select the city. But this again needs to be cities plural. Hit enter and let Visual Studio complete it for you. Cities.dataSource, cities.dataBind, and close the connection. Now you might ask, why do I need the open and close connection so many times? My response could be, well, try it without it and see what happens. But I'll tell you, if you open it up at top and close it at the bottom, in the middle, when it gets to the rest of these, it will say that you already have an open data reader that needs to be closed. So we close the connection and reopen the connection. Closing the connection closes the data reader. Reopen the active connection and move on. So we're going to do a Control-Shift-B, and as long as I haven't mistyped anything, hopefully this will work as expected. Need to come back to my Solution Explorer, right click on here, and so when I'm grading your assignment, if I see this instead of only this, I'll know that you watched the video. But here we've got first name space last name using that concat. We've got all these phone numbers. Now, none of these line up, right? Like we don't know who goes with what, but that's not the purpose. The purpose of it was just for us to learn how to connect to the database, send a select statement, get the data from the database, and then bind that data to a control on the page. And that completes this part of the exercise.